All right, let's talk about one of the most underrated factors when it comes to workout programming, rest periods. In fact, what makes lifting weights strength training versus just cardio is the rest period. If you did a bunch of exercises with no rest period, even if it was bench press, deadlift, squats, overhead presses, but you didn't have rest periods, it's no longer
all cardio.
No longer strength training. It's the rest periods that make the strength training build muscle, just like the weights part. All right.
What's your guess on the percentage of people working out in your commercial gyms that don't utilize this?
Ooh, 60%.
Yeah.
Oh, I
mean, it's high.
I say
It's
higher.
well, it's less now. I don't know, man. Because where I work out now,
I haven't been in a while though, so I don't know.
I think it's way higher.
I mean, back in the day, it was.
You go right now to a commercial gym.
Yeah, and I would say, believe it or not, the people strength training in there do pretty good rest periods. Like they actually take rest.
Yeah, but that's not what I mean. I mean, and you could always tell somebody who is actually paying attention to this because they either got a stopwatch or they're looking up at the clock. Everybody else finds a rest period that they like and they feel comfortable, including ourselves.
Oh, they never modify it, you mean?
Are guilty of this.
Yeah.
Is you find a rest period that works for your way of training, whether that be for strength or hypertrophy or circuit, whatever it is. And then that becomes your kind of set rest period. And you take the same amount of time in the gym, you get about the same amount of exercises done, your rest periods look exactly the same, and they've been exactly the same for months and potentially years. I would say 90+% of the because this used to be one of my favorite ways to change it up for somebody who I would get that would hire me that had been training consistently for a long time.
I agree with you. I would say majority of people don't know how to manipulate rest periods. 100%. But they do take, a lot of people do take a rest period, but it's either they take no rest period or in between sets they're on their phone. Used to be newspapers. I remember people used to be on the newspaper in between sets.
Especially the Peck Deck. It was always like some old guy reading up on world events.
It's like, what are you doing? No, but so generally speaking, for strength training, your rest period should be between 30 seconds on the low end to as long as like 4 minutes on the high end. And that's the range. And then you can play within those ranges to give your body novel stimulus. But it's funny, you're mentioning people who don't do that. It's so funny. So yesterday I went to the movies with my kids, and believe me, there's a point to this. So we go to the movies. There's this kid working the desk. He's friends with my son. He goes to school with him. So he's like, hey, what's up, buddy? Hey, what's going on? Whatever. They talk for a second. We go to the movie. And then I asked my son, I said, is he a wrestler? And he goes, how did you know? And so I could tell by his posture and the way he's holding himself.
Cauliflower ears.
He didn't have cauliflower ear, but I said I could tell by the way he's standing. And my son goes, can you tell often? Like what kind of sport or something? I said, not always. I said, but sometimes it's obvious. And it just made me think of this conversation. There's this woman who works out, and I'll paint the picture for you, okay? She's got some like kind of stubborn body fat. You could tell it's stubborn because she works her ass off. So I'd say maybe 15 pounds or so that's kind of stuck to her body. She's works out very, very vigorously, dark circles under the eyes. She does an exercise to an exercise to an exercise to jumping jacks or treadmill. And I see her in there when I work out all the time. And she's got that look on her face. You know, that look where you could tell they're drained but stimulated. I mean, how often did you guys see this in gyms with people where all they would have to do is slow their workout down, take rest periods, get stronger, and they would get, the fat would come off, and they wouldn't look like they're just running off of caffeine and stimulants. They would look like they're healthy. And I could tell. I watched her. I saw her walk in. I'm like, I know she's going to work out. And sure enough, that's what she does with her workouts.
Well, for the point you're trying to make, I think the same case or argument can be made about the other side too, of the power lifter guy who goes in there and puts chalk on his hands for every 5 minutes before he gets in and does the next set. And he's been lifting that way forever. A great advice to add to this tip would be, if you're in a plateau, here's a great way to bust your plateau. Don't change anything yet. Grab a stopwatch, do your normal flow of your workout, and just pay attention to what you've naturally kind of gravitated towards as far as rest periods, and then go to the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah.
So if you're the lady you're giving an example of, and she's like, oh my God, I never rest longer than 15 to 30 seconds. She's like super. Then the next time you train, or the next training block, let's say for the next month, train with rest periods that are 3 minutes long, and try and challenge yourself by adding more weight to the bar every set. If you're the opposite, you're the power lifter guy or the young kid who likes to rest forever in between or text for 3 minutes in between,
Yeah.
go the opposite direction and go short 30-second rest periods for the next 4 weeks. Those two people that are in plateaus that do that will see a huge difference just from doing
Just got
that.
to interrupt the patterns. I think we just are all fall susceptible to that. And it's just one of those things you don't even recognize it. It's the same thing with like even tempo too. Like we'll recognize in the gym somebody that actually is being really intentional about a negative portion of the rep or like holding it and being super controlled and dialed in. That's always impressed me because it takes that added bit of intuitive focus where they're like, intentional focus, I should say, where they're actually like, taking that on because otherwise we're just going to do what feels like you always do because it's just, I'm going to gravitate towards what I want to do and what I feel like doing, which is not always best for you.
Now, the stopwatch is important because you guessing that you're changing your rest period almost never works.
No.
And
it's just like diet stuff when you think track for a little bit first.
And it's a very different workout in the sense that it's a different focus, it's a different intent. The weight that you select is going to be very different. Like if I'm resting 3 minutes versus 30 seconds, the weight on the bar is way different. Like it's like 50% lighter or less. In fact, my goal when I'm doing short rest periods is to go as light as I can and still make it feel like I'm going heavy. When I'm resting long, now I'm trying to challenge myself with the weight that I'm lifting. So what am I saying here? The challenge with this is the mental piece.
Yeah.
Because we all have a tendency to train in a particular way. And when you change rest periods for some reason is the hardest thing for people to stick to when they make a change. Exercises, I could get people to change. Rep ranges can be challenging too, but rest periods are really hard. Like you take the person who hates resting in between sets, the person that's like, what do I do now? While in between sets. You take that person, have them rest 3 minutes, it's torture. Or you take the person who rests 3 minutes and you make them do 30 seconds, it's torture. So you got to have that stopwatch. Otherwise, it's not going to happen.
It's got to be a momentum thing, right? Like for people that don't like resting, it's just like I have to just like stay busy and just keep doing something. Otherwise, I feel like I'm not working. It's crazy.
Totally.